Guibh Galera Corja agus Tá Fáilte Road. Welcome to be my guest with me, Mary Honan, on Lear Media TV, supporting the Samaritans, Limerick and Tipperary, and also Clare's Wish Foundation. And my lovely guest today is another colleague of mine. Actually, I'm having another later on, Olive Cowper, or Olive Boyer, jeepers, Olive Hurley. But I know so many Olives at this stage. But now with me in the studio is Christine Maguire Duignan, all the way from Connacht. Hello, Christine.
Hey, Mary. Good to talk to you.
Ah, sure. Listen, what else have we to do but to talk?
I was delighted today. It was like I was going someplace. As I said, now I'm only missing the glass of wine here, and I'm on an evening out, an afternoon out, afternoon tea.
You should have. You should have had the wine. As I said to you off camera, Linda Ball arrived with a bottle of prosecco. Herself and Brian Shinner's bottle of prosecco, and they drank it throughout. I felt like Graham Norton.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is the closest I'll get to Graham Norton, Mary, I'm sure. So.
Well, Christine, how did you get involved in Irish dancing?
Oh gosh, 52 years ago now, imagine at this stage. So grew up in Loughrea, at the time a town of 3,000 people, and there weren't really activities, you know, even to do traditional Irish music, you had to go out the country, and my mum didn't drive. So there was a dance teacher, my sister was 3 years older, there was a dance teacher in the town, phenomenal person, still a close friend of mine, Anne O'Loughlin, and my sister was going to the class, had no interest, and I was just brought along to tag along, and instantly, just absolutely into this day, the passion, just loved it. So Anne was, I know you interviewed Sean Kilkenny a while back.
Yes, Sean is lovely. I never met him before that.
Yeah, and Sean as well. And then Jacinta King, she's King O'Sullivan School over in Atlanta. So Anne was so ahead of her time. I mean, when you think about it, in 75, she brought a group of us off to the States on a tour. And again in 79, did a full concert, the precursor to Riverdance, I call it, or Lord of the Dance. 26 kids and 26, and there were a few adult musicians. But at the time, Mary, you know, we didn't have opportunities. So you went to school, you came home and you played outside on the street or in the back garden, or we had fields up the end of the road. And the opportunity, a group of us now have a WhatsApp and we talk about just the opportunity it was to get on a plane. I was 11 the first trip, 15 the second trip. She'd pack us into a car even to go to a feis if the parents couldn't go. Now I have to say my dad.
No safe health and safety then.
Not at all. And I used to always feel sick if I was in the back and she'd say, out you get, you'd run along the country road and she'd drive. You get there. And I think
if there was an inch of space in the car available, they'd pack another child in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Actually, on that note, I remember one time we were doing a gig in Ashford Castle. And
I remember that.
He brought us in the car, and there was a fella, the car had a hatchback, and there was one of the boys was put basically in the boot. But when he got out from Loughrea to Cong, he said, I never knew there was so much sky in the world. He was like this, basically up against the window, the hatchback on the way to
went up to Cong in County Mayo with Bunratty. We were supposed to be performing for Ronald Reagan. And by the time we got up, they had tightened up the security. I don't know what they thought, but the Bunratty entertainers and that were going to do. But they only had one harpist in the end inside there performing. And I think she was from around Mayo, the Connacht area. They had the whole place cordoned off, beautiful Cong or Ashford Castle. But we got into it okay, but we didn't. I was actually in there later on, and we danced for Charlie Haughey. And it's magnificent.
Fab, absolutely.
But the journey up is awful. It's horrendous.
Well, from Limerick now would be a long journey. Yeah,
it was.
But they were the opportunities we had, and we didn't mind if there were 10 of us in the car. My dad was fabulous for bringing a gang of us. We'd swap costumes, swap clothes, you know, the one costume would do 2 age groups nearly if you were stuck, or at one time a girl forgot her costume and she was squeezed into mine. But my father loved the dancing. He was a great set dancer. Yeah. And so I remember as far as I can remember back, Dad would have the 78s on the gramophone and all the traditional musicians playing. And he'd have me up in his arms dancing around the house. So actually recently, funny now with lockdown, we've been inclined to on a Saturday night turn off the telly and or put videos up on the telly and dance, and we're having such fun with it. So I always think Michael Dillon says round the house and mind the dresser. It's a bit like that. Yeah, it was a bit like that. Round the house and mind the dresser. So I suppose I grew up with a lot of Irish music around me. Loughrea would have been a great place for music. But Anne certainly brought opportunity to us that we would never, and it made you feel you could go anywhere in the world or do anything in the world as well. It was
you felt this sense of power, this sense of I can be anything and I can
absolutely. And she developed
that. Your world was bigger than it was.
Yes, yeah. All the excitement when we went off. We weren't used to going on the Spain holidays or the Canaries or anything then, so it was fab.
If you actually went when you'd go to the All Ireland and the World every year, you'd have to plan it from the following day. The thought of having to make that journey to Dublin, or the following year, and it's only 120 miles.
I know,
but 2 hours in a car.
But when I think of the roads were so much worse and the cars were so much worse, I always remember.
Have a car. We had to go by train.
Oh, see.
Stop in at Limerick Junction, get off at Limerick Junction, change into a rattly old bone. Nothing's changed. It's still the same. And then off to Dublin again. And of course, we'd stay in the Gresham because my mum would, was a real hyacinth bouquet, keeping up appearances herself and her friend. We'd stay in the one bed. Nice. One bed, one bed and a single, and everyone would kind of crowd into one bed.
And when we go, I think there was greater emphasis when we go to the Worlds. There was greater emphasis on the fact we'd be going to Sligo for the week afterwards. So as kids, we didn't realise the Worlds was such a big deal. We did because there'd be a bit more pressure. I suppose you even realised it at that stage. There was a bit more competitive pressure. But the thrill of the entire dancing year was going to Feshliggy and Feshkiol for the week. And we used to pile into beds as well. And then I remember as we got a little bit older, parents didn't come and accompany us. So Anne would have us packed in a large room with maybe 2 double beds. It could have been 3 kids in each of the double beds. And then for breakfast in a B&B, you'd go down, you'd eat a bit of the breakfast and you'd come back up and someone else would go down. And you could see.
I won't say who said it, but her daughter was a real established dancer as well, and she was, and I was, being an only child, I wouldn't have been used to being in a room with other girls and that, and I'd never sleep if there was others in the bed with me. But they all decided they were going to go down in the Gresham one night for a drink, and they said to Mum, "Come on down with us. The lads will be okay. They're upstairs." And Mum said, "Mary will never ever sleep where there's others in the room." And the mother actually said to my mother, "It's all right. I gave him a quarter of a value each." And the next morning, it was actually the world up in the mansion house. We couldn't walk. I gave him a quarter. She's long dead now, the lady. Both of them are dead, long dead. But her daughter actually reminded me of it one time. She said, "Do you remember the time my mother gave us all a quarter of a value? Herself, her sister, and me in the bed." I couldn't get out. Mum said,
I thought you were going to say
my arms to get him in the costume the next day.
I thought you were going to say a teaspoon of whiskey or something, because that's
a quarter of a value each. She didn't even ask my mother.
Oh my God. Great times. They were really great times.
Can you just imagine doing it now?
Oh my God, you'd be up in court.
But they were just innocent times. And people,
they were fabulous. And I loved the dance, and I loved all the hype with it. Granted, now she used to pull the hair off us, doing rollers and everything. But she did everything. She took us over and did everything. And my mum was very funny. Mum didn't have any dancing in her blood at all. Whereas Dad, now, he'd timing and everything. He'd know if you danced well. He was more into it than Mum.
Yeah.
Would be watching and of course that time it was one adjudicator, and you'd come down and whether you dance good or bad, Mum would say, she was watching you. He was watching you. Oh no, she wasn't watching you at all.
What about that? My mother would be watching the judge, and she'd say, he was watching you, or
Yeah.
And that was the pinnacle. You'd know, well, if he was watching. Nowadays, now when you're a judge, you know that sometimes, well, you're watching everyone,
Yes.
and that doesn't mean that they're going to
exactly
to win.
Exactly.
It just means that you're watching them.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I met you, that I actually was really realized who you were, and I was absolutely mortified afterwards, was when I judged Chris Dominican's fet, and your Shane danced, and it was he was a beginner, he was in the grades, and I called you afterwards and I said, you should keep him at dancing, he's going to be a champion. And he was after winning everything with me that day. And you said, thank you. And you said, I teach with. And I kind of thought, I should have, I felt absolutely that I didn't know you're number one, and that I had the nerve of actually saying to you, keep him in dancing.
No, it was lovely though. Wasn't that lovely?
And I remember you coming over at the British Nationals when he won his first British Nationals, and you said to me, you told me to keep him at it.
Yeah, you used to love him. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I just thought he was very natural.
Yeah. Well, they see the boys were born in Orica. Going back to me with the dancing. So then I kept it going. And in Loughrea, I was doing it till maybe I was about 16 or 17 into leaving cert. And in a small town, sure, I was ancient at that stage, because people didn't stick with it. So then I went off to Galway to college, or university, as we used to say that time. And if she was doing a team for the Connachts or anything, she'd call me and I'd come back. But I still absolutely loved it. So then after 4 years been in Galway, I was working, I was a year in Connemara. Then I was working in Limerick. So that's what brought me to Limerick. So I was working in Wang, and I was in town one day.
You were an engineer, didn't you?
Yes, yeah, did industrial engineering. So I was in town one day, and of course I would have danced in the same age group as Niamh Nolan. So I was in town, knew Rose and Tony very well as Niamh's mum and dad,
Yeah.
And of course, Tony would often have judged me as well, and bumped into them and got chatting. And you're in Limerick now. And ironically enough, at the time, Ken was in Limerick and I was going out with him. And Niamh's husband now, Dave, he was working in Wang as well. So we all, it was just a melting pot of us all. So Tony said to me, geez, come into the class. We have a class on a Thursday. And I thought, oh God, I'm gone old and I'm whatever now at this stage. So anyway, the Thursday evening I went into the class, and I will never forget walking in and being so astounded. It was the senior class, and one side of the hall, there must have been about 20 people. And in the heyday in Loughrea, 20 people in a full class when you were young was a big class.
Huge. It's still a big class.
Yeah, but this was all seniors, which was, to me, it was just fabulous. And everyone was so welcoming. So that started off a whole other chapter in it. But the funny thing is, then I had such a connection with Anne O'Loughlin that when Tony said to me to come in, I said, and now I'd been out at the dancing, and I said, I will now, but I'll phone Anne. I'll see if Anne's okay with it, so to speak. And he often talked about that afterwards, it was so sweet. But for us, she was more than a dance teacher to us. She had done so much for us.
Yeah, it's amazing how you become so... Celine Penny, I wouldn't have said Celine was I went to Celine when Celine got me into Bunratty. She told me that they were auditioning for Bunratty, and I applied, and Clem Sullivan came down to her house and interviewed me in her house, and that's how I started off in Bunratty. But I used to help her with her class. But I always felt a special connection with Celine, because she was so, and even when she was in the nursing home, oh God, there were so many funny things. When she was in the nursing home, I used to take her out of the nursing home in her, and we'd try and get her wheelchair in. And one day I was on crutches, I broke my leg, and I decided to bring her to the beach, to Lahinch. got her in the nursing home, into the car. It took ages to get her in. The wheelchair was packed in. I drove off, got to Ballybunion. And when I got there, I had no crutches. I'd left the crutches back in the nursery.
So she couldn't even get out of the car.
A man had to come along and he had to push her up into the restaurant, and then he had to link me while I hopped with the broken leg, and we sat in the bar we sat in the bar until it was time for someone to help us back into the car, and I could drive back, and they had I'd left the crutches on the top of the car, and the nurse had taken them off, forgot to put them in. Do you know, and you remember these things.
God, yeah.
Never forget these things.
Yeah. Made it more memorable.
I've never actually mentioned that. It's just so funny. Celine actually she hit me with a book, and she said, "I can't believe it that you're after how are we going to get up into the bar?" We never saw the beach in the end.
But you got out. She got out. It's the important thing. Yeah.
But you do remember those things. And it's funny, long after your competitive career is over, they're the things you remember.
Oh, absolutely. The fun we used to have. And as I say, getting out of the car when the car would be going along, and I feel sick, and there was no such thing as, oh, God love you, or do you need it? It was, okay, out you go, run the road. Hop back in. And then if you complained about a stage,
they'd stop you on the side of the road if you felt you wanted to get sick.
I laugh now when kids talk about, or parents are, is it a championship size stage, or what's the stage? It was, if we dared complain about a stage, it was, get up out of that. The stage is very bouncy, bounce with it. The stage is very slippy, well, slip with it.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Hoban was my stage was 40, and Linda had the same one 40 foot stage, and all our stages were gone that before COVID. And I'm wondering now, will people be more accepting when we come back, because they've got used to making everything smaller?
Yes, and it might not be any harm, because one of my pet peeves now is that there's so much what I call running around the stage, that, you think back, and even the sets have started to, that you've less rhythm now and people are doing more movement. And Ken, my husband, doesn't know anything. Well, he does now by being brought into the dance family, but didn't know anything about it. And he thought there was huge irony in everybody wondering how big the stage used to be, because he used to say to me, what's the fuss about the stage? They all start off and they congregate on the right hand side in the front, and then they congregate on the left hand side, and they're bumping into each other. When you think back in our day, there was such pattern to it. You didn't go just back and forth. And there was a lot more in front of the judge as well, where you'd see the feet, and have people going to the side where they're camouflaging.
People going to the side, in a lot of cases, it's strategic, because if they've got any problem at all, if they've got any dodgy foot at all, and they're reluctant to face you out,
yes,
kind of say there's something, maybe there's a reason they're just going from right to left to right to left, and over into that corner and over into this corner, and never facing you on.
Yes, yeah.
And do you think that I don't know, do you work on Zoom much?
No.
But do you, I'm just wondering, will Zoom have, I was talking to Terry and Philip in the very beginning, and Philip loved the Zoom because he said everyone could practice and concentrate on their feet, and children who hadn't got good feet could work on their feet, and they were facing you and you were focused on their feet. Terry, on the other hand, who likes making up steps and seeing movement and things like that, he wasn't so much fond of the Zoom. But I'm judging one of our Michael Dillon's. He's running a charity fesh on my first time judging on Zoom now. And I'm just wondering, I think that people will actually focus in this period a little bit more on their feet.
Yes.
It's always a positive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But then the movement, the natural flow will be gone.
Yeah, but I think that will come back.
It'll come back, and hopefully the feet will stay.
Yeah,
good.
that would be good. Absolutely. Yeah, sure. For God's sake, when we danced on the back of lorries and whatnot, in the field. I often remember that.
Floors. I was talking to an artist the other day. She's from Liscannor. Well, she's from Clare, but her family are from Liscannor. And I said the amount of times I danced in Bunratty on flagstone floors.
Oh, I know.
Liscannor stone. And it was all uneven.
Yeah. Now I still have an issue. I walk the prom, but if I was to run the prom here, I have an issue with shin splints still, funnily enough. Every now and again from years of every kind of a floor. But Mary, we didn't do a warm up or anything then.
No.
Well, then again, I walked to the class. I was on the back of my mother's bicycle when I was very young.
Walked everywhere.
And there, yeah. So your warm up was walking to class. You came out then. We didn't even bring drinks when I think about it, and we'd go across and we'd get the penny drinks in the shop across the road, and that was the hydration on the way back home, and the cool down was the walk home at night.
I was lucky if I made it through the whole class because Maureen O'Rourke used to send me home a few times. Talking.
Oh, are you serious?
And on one or two occasions I wasn't talking, but when you have the name of being a chatterbox, if there's any sound, Mary Honan, go home. But I'd go back in the other door. I'd go back in again. I loved her. She was
and she's still great, a great person.
She's just fabulous. I mean, we've been lucky, I suppose, that we've lived through some great characters.
Fantastic. Absolutely.
Now, I mean, I wouldn't have said Celine was ever a character in the sense that she didn't do anything that was funny, or she was very controlled and very ladylike and very
I remember her. Yeah.
Sensible and things like that. But she just was absolutely passionate about the dancers. She never got up off the seat. She taught sitting down. And I don't know how she did it to this day, but she would have 40 in a class. And whereas Maureen was very hands-on and pulling you around, and Tony Nolan was great.
Oh, incredible. Absolutely incredible. Great. And that started a whole other era, I suppose, for me, with Brendan Crohinger, Stack, Neve was dancing at the time as well, Brian White.
I was in Siobhan O'Mahony's age group.
Yes. I always remember about Siobhan was she had the doll that matched with gold underwear. Siobhan's doll and herself had gold underwear.
Yeah, she said she maintains that I gave her that nickname, but I didn't. I didn't at all. I was actually very. I don't know where she got it, but I was in purple and cream, and she was in red and gold.
Yeah, fabulous dancer.
And the doll had the
red and gold.
Yeah.
Very Urixy. That was very much ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing Anne O'Loughlin used to do with us as well. She'd kit us out from head to toe. The parents had no involvement with it. And she had great taste, with doing what would suit you and whatever.
My mother designed my costumes, but they were always when Dad would be asleep. He'd be turned over on his side. She'd have the paper on his back, and she'd be drawing it. And then a friend of hers was a tailor. She'd make it. And then Alice O'Brien, Eugene O'Brien.
Yes.
To embroider it, because she was a fanatic about costumes. I forget who I was saying to the other day. Oh, it was to Mary McCarthy. It was like an unveiling. She had a zip before they came in. A zip made for me.
Wow.
That went up to here, and I was warned with a new costume. It's not to be taken off until you're going out on stage. And she'd have about.
I remember them.
Panties, same amount of socks in case you sat and you got dusty, and they were changed immediately.
Yeah.
Just like, and the hair and rollers.
Yes.
And then it was gone 2 minutes after you went up on stage. I had this again.
Well, you had good strong hair, probably. Mine used to, it would be. would be, that's why I've gone to this now.
I have the same hair as you.
Mountain. Oh, do you?
Yeah, very fine hair.
Let
Baby
it grow
hair,
long
baby
then,
hair.
Mary.
Huh?
It's great that you can let it grow long, because mine just goes.
Oh, it's just dead straight. It's poker straight. If I put a roller in it 5 minutes later, it's like there was nothing in it. Looks ironed. It's so straight.
I loved it all, though. I loved the pomp of the dressing up and the costumes and the stage and the getting away and whatever else it brought. Really loved it. And sure, then even as an adult, when I had been out of it, it was a whole other scenario then where, you know, you went and it was a different kind of fun, because with your peers, you know, it was go to the pub on a Thursday night after the class. And at the time I was going out with Ken, and he was doing taekwondo in Limerick. So we'd go in together. He'd go to his taekwondo. I'd go to the dancing. We'd meet in the pub afterwards. Then if you were doing gigs or anything, sure, all the boyfriends and the girlfriends had come along, and to All Ireland's, and God love Rose Nolan, she'd be going around minding everybody, trying to see where girlfriends and boyfriends separated. And
great as well, you know, they dedicated their entire life.
Absolutely.
You know, the likes of the O'Rourke's and the Maureen and Anya used to teach me as well, and and they dedicated their entire life.
Absolutely.
To dancing. Absolutely. And Rose and Tony.
Yeah.
I mean, Rose would be Rose used to help me with my fesh, collecting the money on the door. My God, you could depend so much on her. She was there, spot on in the morning. Herself and Maureen Farrelly, I'd have been lost without. You know, and then the fesh was, you know, we've had to cancel. But she hasn't been there for a few years because she had a fall 1 year, and she couldn't help out. And so, yeah, lovely person as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
But your boys were born in America, your triplets.
Yeah. So then I was in Limerick from 86 to 93. And then Ken had moved from Wang to Analog. Wang had sort of fallen apart then. Ken actually used to be in Tops of the Town in Wang with Charlie Moore, and I think not Antoinette, Marion Leonard probably was in it at the time.
I was in Tops of the Town the year we got to the Gaiety. We were against Jacob's Biscuits. Wang were in it as well, but it was...
that would have been what? That would have been 84, I'd say.
84.
Yeah, I didn't join until 86.
84.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a great experience again. Fabulous friendships. And
yeah. So Ken transferred to Analog in Limerick then, and through that in 93 he got the opportunity to go to San Jose in California.
Wow.
And we were very settled, you know, we had 2 jobs on the go, and I just thought, probably because I'd had the experience in dancing as you know, being a teenager going to America as well. So when he came home and he announced it to me, he was like, well, what do you think? And I was, when do I pack? So we just...
You're the perfect partner to have.
Oh, sure, God, he's had me do it a few times since. And then I was like, okay, we've had enough of it. But it's great. It's a great adventure. It's something I've said to the boys. I really recommend them to go. And it's if you get the opportunity, it's great to live somewhere else. So, I mean, it's difficult initially, transition and all can be difficult. But we headed off in 1993, and fabulous. We just absolutely loved it. It took time, you know, settling in. So I had no involvement with the dancing whatsoever then. The boys were born in 95. The boys were born, and it was busy, as you said, triplets.
I asked you how your little body could take having triplets.
Very poorly.
Huh?
Very, very poorly. I was so sick, Mary. I was just so sick. In and out of hospital, and the boys were born 10 weeks premature. So my body did not, well, it held up enough, but yeah, it was a big struggle. I couldn't...
Did you know you were expecting triplets?
Well, I was on the broad of my back most of the time. And when I was up and about, you know, I was just sick. I was physically vomiting the whole time for the 30 weeks. So yeah, they were born prematurely, but there was fabulous care, absolutely amazing medical care. And we were, they knew they would be born prematurely, and the goal was how far could we push to get them. Um, and they had introduced me to the NICU, the intensive care unit for neonatals, um, uh, and shown me how tiny the babies would be. And then they used to joke and they'd say to me, well, they're going to be tiny anyway, because look at your body, even if you got them to full term. So
what were they born? What weight were they?
They were 3 pounds. Kenneth was the firstborn, 3 pounds, 215 and 210. Shane was the smallest, but he was the first one breathing on his own, ironically enough. And then Connor was the first one to leave. They didn't all leave the hospital together. They were in hospital for a while. So it was tough. It was a tough time. We were away from everybody. We had great neighbours. I had a lady who was Connor's godmother. She was from Manchester, lived across the street. Ken, of course, then was travelling with work. I had been working. When I went over there, I got a job.
It's really hard for you in a strange, well, not a strange country, because you can, but you speak the language, but in a country that's not your
Yes.
country of familiarity,
Yeah.
And you have 3 newborn babies,
Yeah.
and your husband's working away.
Yeah. So even during the pregnancy, Ken had been traveling. And it's funny, the things you forget about, and then when you're talking to somebody, you remember. Then in the midst of it, Ken was in Japan at one stage then, and I was on bed rest, but they'd let me out of the hospital, so I was home. So my friend across the street, Carol, the Manchester friend, originally from Manchester, she had twins. They were about 6 at the time. So Carol would come in, she had the garage door opener, so she'd come in the garage and up the stairs and try and see, could she get food into me? And, I was on different medications and that. But then, of course, in the midst of it all, I was in the heart of the San Andreas fault line. So there was a massive earthquake. Well, massive, it wasn't that massive, but it was big.
It was massive for you.
It was big enough to shift the base of the bed. So I'm big as a tent, and the bed shifts, and I had to get friends I had to barely get myself out of it and get friends in to sort the bed out and everything again. So the things that you laugh about afterwards that are just part of the experience. But yeah, when the boys were born, that was scary. They were born in November, and that Christmas, they were coming up to Christmas, they were having a series of different tests, eye tests for retinopathy of prematurity, and we were researching everything and checking. So we were very, very lucky that they were so well. Kenneth then had very mild cerebral palsy that took a long time for them to diagnose, because
it was very mild.
It was very mild. He was borderline, but I knew there was something.
Did you?
Yeah, well, he had eye issues as well, and so the combination when he was a toddler of when he'd walk, you didn't know if it was his eyesight. Like when he had his eye surgery, things improved greatly, but it was balance as well, and maybe the background in dancing as well. You'd notice these things, but when you're comparing the 3 together, you notice that the others, he found it very difficult to crawl. He found it, and for a long time then, after we got the diagnosis, they said to me, the big celebration in our house was when he was about 7 and he got to ride a bicycle, because they had said, well, he won't ride a bicycle, or he probably won't run. So we had corrective casts, and we'd, I suppose quite a lot of, but they seemed very minor things, because he was feisty and he was determined, and he had his brothers to keep up with as well. And thanks be to God, the other 2 then were fine. And cognitively, all 3 of them, and where we were also, they did so much testing and checking up on them, and that went on for several years. There was an afterbirth program where if your children are premature, they're checking. The funny thing there was they'd go in, they'd show them a series. Their vocabulary was advanced always for their age. And I used to say it's the gift of the gab. It comes with being
the Irish.
The Irish. but they'd show a series of photographs, and the boys would say, you know, dog, cow, whatever. The dog says woof, the cow says moo. But then they showed a mug, and the boys were cup of tea, cup of tea. Because I'd always say to them, you know, at such a young age, it'd be time out now. Mom needs her cup of tea, cup of tea.
So, you find, because you were a dance teacher, were you in any way, were you able to help Kenneth with balance?
The thing is, I wasn't a dance teacher at that stage.
But you had the dance background.
Yes, yeah.
And
so I did, and also I started him. Well, we had an awful lot of OT for him as well. So you got your series of exercises, and I was very involved.
Occupational therapy.
Yes,
for anyone.
Sure that I'd have all of the exercises, and the same with any physical therapy we had. So we did a lot of follow-up programs for him. But with the dancing, as he got older, I actually taught all three of them, but I taught him to dance solely for the purpose of trying to get balance and improve his balance. And then as well, I had him do tin whistle even when we came back to Ireland, he was doing tin whistle, and he used to say to me, I hate this tin whistle. But in the absence of, he had more difficulties with his fine motor skills than his gross motor skills. And in the absence of any physical therapy, like the movement for the tin whistle was fabulous for him. So when I say to him, I don't care if you never played a tune, but just keep doing something with it. And then he was quite determined, you know, with all of that. So I wasn't teaching dancing at all at that stage. I had been working for a bit over a year when I was over there. I was working in a company that was bought over by Siemens. And then, of course, once the boys came along, there was enough work to be done at home, more than enough work. So then I was, as you are always, of course, out on a Paddy's night, and a group of dancers came out and give me a drink, and I want to dance, you know. So the teacher was with them. It was Rosemary Turco in San Jose. So went over anyway and said hello to the dancers and to Rosemary, and said, you know, I was from Ireland and I used to dance. And she was, oh, come up and dance with us. So danced a step in my socks or whatever it was. And she came to me afterwards and said, would I help her out with one of her students that wanted to do private classes, and she was working full time and didn't have time. And so that started me sort of getting back into the dancing a little bit. And at first I was, God, you know, I wouldn't know what to do with them now. You know, I'd been gone from it for not many years, but a few years. And we all know how fast it moves on. So then Tony Nolan was over judging. Sandra Green used to have still has, I think, a great fish.
Yeah.
It was the boys' first fish, actually.
Lovely Sandra.
Yeah, it was, honest, her fish was amazing. Silicon Valley fish, it was called.
Really, yes.
So Tony was over judging that, and he came to stay with us. And he commented to me, Shane was reaching up to get water out of the fridge or something, and he said, "Geez, look at that fella on the feet. You know, would you ever send him to? Would you ever start him dancing?" And I was, you know, I'd have to drive, and it's something else to do. And out of the blue, then he said to me, "You know what? Give me the phone there." He said, "What time is it in Dublin?" He said, "Give me the phone there." And he said, "Do you goddamn dancing teachers yourself? 'Tis more than time." He had been at me for years to do it. So he phoned Dublin, and he's on to the commission office, and he's asking me, what's your address? To send out the package for the TCRG. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I had a short amount of time, and it was great. Get fit, take on something new. So it was meant to be.
Yeah. So no, but as I say, I wouldn't have even noticed Kenneth's little disability at the time. Did it? It never affected him though. It never affected him in schooling. He was going to college the same as the other two boys. They were at the same. They were in the same year in college. They were doing.
Oh yeah, cognitively he was very, very bright, and sometimes, Mary, I think too bright. You know, there can be a fine line where you overthink everything, and you So yeah, when he took his own life, our whole world just fell apart. He had completed first year in college. He was doing great. We just never saw it, Mary. Never, ever, ever. And life was good. We had moved back to Ireland. He was the one that loved being back in Ireland. Truth be told, Ken and myself found it a bit difficult to readjust. We were used to, the good weather and whatever else and the good life. And when we came back, it was. And
you had there were no signs. There were no.
Not going back on it now, we look back and we think, little things he might have said, but honestly and truly, no. He had got first class honours in his first year. He was doing science. The other two lads were doing engineering. He had got his exams. He was frustrated in that summer not getting work. And they were volunteering with the Galway Arts Festival, and he loved it. And so then when it went into the week afterwards, Galway Race Week here was always busy. And he was the one that got work for a week in a pub. And he was ecstatic that he got it. And he came home and he said, and do you know what? He said, I was able to get one other position in it. Conor, would you like to take it? He gave the option to Conor ahead of Shane. And that week, he was working. And I often think, was that a very bad thing as well? Because it was very late and it's a rough crowd oftentimes you'd have in the pub, but he was delighted to be doing it. But I think he needed a lot of sleep. Things took him a lot longer physically to do. But he was hugely into exercise, very determined, just gave everything. One of the teachers in the school had always said that he should go into the Special Olympics for weightlifting. He was really into weightlifting and just exercise in general. But very, very hard on himself. I often had the conversation with him. Kenneth, would you chill? Would you chill a bit? Life is tough enough. Don't make it any more difficult for yourself. So now we look back on little things like that and we say, was he unhappy in his head? But you couldn't. You just, without getting inside somebody's head, we could never have preempted. That week of Galway Race Week, there was actually a dance workshop going on out with Angela, Derek and Anne-Marie, and I was out there for the week. I was back working here then. I'd gone back to work after the boys finished secondary school. And we'd been back here, 6 years at the time. And the Saturday, the kids had their grade exams. So there was a party in Derek's house to celebrate the grade exams with the kids. And I came back in, of course, we were late then coming home that evening. And I came in and the boys, Conor and Kenneth, Shane had been with me. And Conor and Kenneth had gone out to work. And I said to Shane, Kenneth dropped them in, so there was no car. And I said, oh, bummer, I missed the two lads before they went to work, which was 10 o'clock or something. It was the long summer's evenings. So they'd work very late. They'd work at maybe 9 o'clock, but they'd work from 9 and maybe not finish until 4. And every day that week, we used to get up at maybe 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock and check because it's very difficult to get taxis during race week. And so on the Friday night when Ken we take every other night, Ken would get up one night, I'd get up the next night. And on the Friday night when Ken came back up to bed, he said, Kenneth said to me, Dad, he'd phoned Kenneth one night or Conor another night. Dad, we're grand. They're giving us a free pint after working so hard. And we're old enough now, we can make our own way home. We were babying them too much, he was letting us know. So so they got a taxi on the Friday night. And then on that Saturday night, we consciously made the decision that we wouldn't get up to
check on
them or see if they wanted the lift home. So they got a taxi home. They shared it with 2 other people and they got off. We're just up from the prom. So they got off at the prom and walked up the road. And he said to Conor that night, do you ever wonder where life's going? Or something to do to the effect of, you know, that you don't figure out life. And I know Conor expressed remorse afterwards that he kind of dismissed him. But I said to Conor, if he said to me, I'd say, look at me, I still haven't figured out life. You're never going to figure it out.
Has.
You know, it was, and he would have had deep conversations. He was quite deep and philosophical with stuff. Even though it was science he was studying, we often thought he was quite philosophical with things. So yeah, so poor Shane found him then the next morning. It was, and people say, oh, it's the spur of the moment and something gets into their head, but I don't know. I don't know, was something he had thought through. It was too well orchestrated. So, and our world fell apart, Mary, and it'll never be the same again. Never.
I don't know what to say.
There's nothing anybody can say, and it will always be there. It's a huge part of us, and we've all had such blessed lives before that, and thankfully the four of us have had such blessed lives since that, but it'll be a huge part. And I just wish, I remember saying to so many of the friends we had during the funeral, I mean, friends just rally around you, and people came in and set up like a tent out the back for the kids to gather, the college kids at the time, and the very close-knit community, the school had gone to the Bish. They were all gathered outside, and I went out to talk to them, and I said to them, if you would just talk to somebody, you know, we can't help, we can't fix anything if you don't. And it's the one thing I would always say to kids in the dancing, if anything is bothering you. It's made me so much more aware that so often our attitude will be with somebody, suck it up, you know, because that's the way we were reared, if they're moaning and groaning. And I always say, sometimes maybe people aren't able to suck it up, and we don't, to get our heads inside that, especially if we're strong-willed ourselves and from a problem-solving.
But you had no way. There isn't. I mean, there's no possible way that you could have preempted anything like this. I mean, from Conor, from what he simply saying, have you ever thought how life is played out? I mean, we all ask that question, and people do say it is a spur of the moment thing. But yeah, it's I really don't know what to say. I mean, it was such a shock. It was such a shock to everybody that knew Kenneth and knew you and knew the boys since they were children.
Yes.
You know, since the very first day that I saw them dancing. Do you know? And it was just I actually thought it was like there has to be some mistake when I heard it.
Yeah, a lot of people actually. And then they were wondering when they heard Kenneth, because of course he had Ken's name, they were thinking God was a Ken when they heard it. But yeah.
And how does COVID lockdown, is it helping or is it exacerbating the situation? I mean, you have more time you're closer as a family, but there's more probably time to be contemplative about it, to think. Well, is that helping? Is that?
Well, you know, we're 6 years since Kenneth died, and
it's hard to believe.
It is hard to believe that, and definitely time helps. Jesus Mary, the first few months, I could not open my front door and go out to the gate. You're just overcome with fear. That's the only way I can describe it. And, you know, I'd always say to kids dancing as well, I definitely think the dance training helps. It's sort of shoulders back, head up and plow through, you know, that you definitely get some kind of tenacity from years of competition or whatever, and it definitely helped me.
But you're prepared for taking criticism, you're prepared for taking loss.
Yeah. And I remember when I finally got out to walking the prom, somebody said to me once, and what are you afraid of? And it's like, you can't describe what you're afraid of. I couldn't had clothes. I had 2 lots of clothes. One went in the wash for several weeks afterwards. You wore one, you swapped them out, but you just plow through because you have to. So somebody said to me, "What are you afraid of?" And it's like, I don't know, but your whole world has fallen from under you. So this fear engulfs you. And I remember walking the prom when I finally got out there, and I'd go down on the beach away from everybody and thinking, all these people, like, can they not see I'm different? People are walking by and of course they don't see, and I often think now when I see people, we have no idea what anyone is going through or inside anyone's head, because I would be walking down there and I didn't know my right hand from my left hand or what was going on. You just got up, you ate just about, if you did, or
you just functioned.
And even then I don't think I functioned very well. So COVID hasn't been, I became quite reclusive for a while then, and I got into decorating the house and things like that, and just got inside my own head, and music on all the time.
Music did it for me as well when you're grieving.
Yeah.
Music.
Incredible. My friends, the group of friends I had were incredible. We stuck together very much as a family. We're very close, but we had always been very close. And then it was, I got more involved in the dancing. I went out to Inishmore. And for me, that was great escapism. And for me, I wanted to do the dancing, go out and go somewhere where you feel you're, enhancing the culture. You're
making a difference.
Yeah, exactly.
You're thinking about others rather than for a while. Trying to not think, but it's always there. Did it make you more protective over the likes of Conor and Shane? Were you
not as far as they could see, but inside my head, I was a crazy woman whenever they went anywhere. But I couldn't put reins on them. In fact, quite the contrary. Conor went off to America, I think it was the following summer, and I was all gung-ho for him going. And afterwards I thought, oh my God, I was too encouraging. But it was, no, do whatever. I just wanted to make sure I didn't stop their lives. Like, there was enough of life destroyed. And I think that's a great impetus for us as well. It was great motivator to get up and do things, because Ken went back to work. I didn't. I gave up.
It's been very hard for Ken as well, because men feel they automatically slot into this protector mode, and they're not as good at articulating. I don't want to generalize some men.
No, you're absolutely right.
But I think they're not as good at articulating grief. Or I know I watched my own dad when we got the phone call to say that my grandmother had died in England, and he went up to the bedroom to cry because he didn't want us to see him crying. And it's something I do, is to go away and cry. My mother would have been different, the whole place would have known that she was upset.
Well, we did a lot of crying separately as well, because I didn't want to upset the boys. I didn't want to upset Ken. He didn't. So that took time and a lot of counselling as well, which I highly recommend to anybody.
Would you?
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh my gosh. That weekly hour I used to go for, I was 2 years going for an hour a week. Yeah, absolutely. That, my friends, the dancing, getting back to the dancing.
And what advice would you have for people going through similar situations now during this unprecedented times, where they mightn't have the stability of a great husband and children behind them to help them? What advice would you have advice for them?
Find what's good for them that will make them care for themselves, and especially if it's a mother, because as mothers we tend to everybody else and we're forgotten about. So find what will nurture them. If it's a bath and a nice body lotion, if it's a walk, if it's smelling flowers, if it's buying flowers, if it's talking. Usually women have female friends, and I think don't be afraid to mention it, because other people, a lot of your friends will want to mention it, but they don't want to upset you.
Well, I didn't want to mention it now today to you.
Well,
And
I knew
why
that
I said at the,
previously, yeah.
at the start of the program, was there anything off limits with you? And you very generously said no.
No, but Mary, I feel it's very important to speak about it.
It is, and because this show is associated, I suppose,
Exactly.
with Samaritans and with Claire's Wish. Claire's Wish Foundation isn't a suicide awareness charity. He set it up in remembrance of his sister who had spina bifida. But the Samaritans is, and the importance of talking to people, talking when you feel that you're in crisis, or talking when you feel that you have nobody.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone.
And you know, when you invited me on the show, that was my first thing. Oh God, Mary, I don't know. And I thought, no, because of the Samaritans, I thought, no, it is.
I actually wasn't going to touch on the subject at all. I was going to keep it completely on Irish dancing.
It's part of me now.
It's part of you.
It's part of me. You know, when I'm out and about and somebody says, oh, if you meet and if you're in a queue someplace and you end up talking to somebody, and do you have children? And oh, I have, they're grown up. It's a bit easier now, but and I try and evade the question a little bit. Oh, they're grown up, and oh, and how many kids do you have? Or very recently, I'm doing a course, and there was the whip around. Oh, who's, you know, and it's what birthdays. You know, if somebody says, oh, what birthday, and it's, oh, are they twins? And you're like, oh. And sometimes I couldn't, in the beginning, I'd break down crying, because it's like, I cannot deny that Kenneth's existence if I say they're twins. Now I'm at a stage where, okay, is this a person I'm never going to meet again? Just, you're making them uncomfortable, you're making yourself uncomfortable, try and avoid it and move on. Or what do you say? No, they're triplets, but one has passed away. And you try and pass it off nicely, then people get uncomfortable. So it's awkward, and death is awkward, and grief is awkward to talk about. And I think it's very important, and mental illness is awkward to talk about. And sometimes it's the person that you think is fine. If anybody had said, and the teachers in the school said that to us, the principal of the school said, if anybody was to ask me to pick the family least likely where this would occur in our entire school, I would probably have ye in the mix. And if anybody was to pick your three boys and say which one, I would have Kenneth in the mix of the one that would never, that he was a strong personality. So you really do not know. And I remember when he said that to me, I thought, yeah, we thought Kenneth was the tough nut of the three boys.
It was probably a front.
A front, yeah. And our house is split level here. The stairs are quite wide. It's only 8 steps up to the bedrooms. And I remember so many times, and I still think about it, how could I have known my boys so intimately as I thought, so well? And I often passed him on the stairs when he was coming down, and hey, ma'am, and I'd be going up, and you'd hear, hey, ma'am, hey, Kenneth. Are you getting your homework done? Whatever. How could I have passed him and his head a mess? How could I not have known that? How could I not have got inside? And when things were difficult, I always used to say to him, will you hang on now there, Kenneth? Because he'd escalate things often in his head. You know, he was impulsive as well. A couple of little traits that I looked at. But when he'd escalate things, I'd say, would you calm down? And the engineer would kind of kick in, you know, very, very logical. Would you calm down? Imagine it's a cake, slice it up, digestible chunks, one chunk at a time, you know, I'd be all, and I thought I was training the boys that you can solve anything, because I was always of the belief you can solve anything. It may not be the best solution, but everything, you can find a solution to things.
Yes.
And that was the one thing I always thought, well, wasn't that arrogant of me as well? Because you cannot solve death or the hurt it brings or the grief. And I couldn't solve what was ever going on in his head, because, of course, I didn't know about it. So there's a lot there that.
And sometimes when people, you know, you were talking about people look awkwardly at you when you bring the subject up, or they feel awkward. I think it's an eighth sense in people that they do feel like that. But really, what somebody like you is just looking for, especially when you're talking, is, and when somebody is in immediate grief in the aftermath of something, is not to just run away from them, to just listen.
Yes.
Sometimes listening is more powerful.
Yeah.
So much more powerful than actually trying to come up with wise answers.
Yes.
And wise solutions and trying to solve somebody's problem, because I can possibly imagine what it's like to be in Christine Duignan's head right now, even talking to me.
Yeah.
But I can listen.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd say, I mean, Mary, there were 3 people taken from the river here, or the sea, found in the sea in the last month. And
that's right. I heard there was 5 the other night.
Well, there are 4 missing, and I'm not sure if they found the 4th person. So it's all around us, and it's more pronounced now with COVID, I think. You asked me, what difference does it make to us? It doesn't. We're very fortunate the age we're at. The boys have 2 permanent jobs. They're working. The only situation for us was Ken was in the States on a 3-year contract, and we were living over, we were back and forth with each other. So we packed up his apartment last October and he moved back. So he's working from home. But at our age, COVID doesn't matter. I'm able to go out and I've a lovely beach to walk every day. But I'm constantly thinking of the young people that are struggling, who can't. I mean, you know, when you're young, oh, your friends are everything. You don't want to talk to your parents. You don't want to talk, you know, it's your friends all the way. I'm also really cognizant of people that are have young kids and they're homeschooling and they're down in salary, and it's tough. So, you know, people say to me, oh, how are you doing? We're 6 years on. We had a fabulous Christmas this year. And that's the other thing I'd say to people: if you're in the horrible grip of grief at the moment, things improve.
That's what I think I'm trying to ask you. About somebody maybe that's the people of those 4 or those 3. How are they? Suggestions?
Well, unfortunately, I had about a year and a half after Kenneth died. Actually, it was almost 2 years, I think. There was somebody had a similar situation in our neighborhood, and I didn't want to annoy the mother or anything. Anyway, I wrote a letter to the mother, and she was always able to see how much ahead I was in the grief journey. And while it's very different for everybody, there is a process, I suppose you'd say, or a pattern, a general pattern to it. And the first year was bad, but everybody rallies around you. The second year for me was hell, absolute hell. And I had done a big fundraiser for Kenneth's first anniversary, and we'd done it for Console. And then there was the whole issue with the finances in Console and everything. So that was rock bottom for me. When I was in year 2, people have moved on with their lives, and there's the anticipation that you've moved on with yours.
Yeah.
And then this happened as well. And I felt that was the rock bottom for me. And then things slowly, you build up. Ken and myself were talking about it a few weeks ago, and we were saying there's this hole in our hearts or in our lives, and it's always going to be there, but your life expands, and
you build a callus over
it. We do it. It's not to take from that hole that will always be present for me. I got a tattoo to remind me that I'm bringing this to the grave with me, because I used to say to the boys, don't ever get a tattoo, because you can't go back, you'll bring it to the grave. But each year that progresses, you're building another life around, or the rest of your life around it. And while there's that emptiness there, there's a lot of joy. We had a fabulous Christmas this year in the midst of COVID, where the boys had their 2 girlfriends here. And I hated Christmas after Kenneth died. And I genuinely had a fun, good crack. like the old Christmases we used to have. The girls were new energy here. They're two lovely girls. The boys were happy.
Hard to believe that they're old enough to have girlfriends now.
I know. 25, Mary, they're 25.
I remember him when he was that size, and I was
I know.
watching to see where he was going. And I can still remember that fesh because Chris Domican had a little podium. That she had the seat up and my seat and the table.
Oh God.
And I turned to watch the competition that was next. There was another competition behind me on the floor, and the seat came off the edge, and I fell backwards. Remember that? I had a black, beautiful outfit. I still have the outfit. And I can still remember my two legs went up in the air, and I landed in Chris Domican's lap.
Yeah, I remember that.
Chris Domican saved my pride. I was mortified, and all I could hear was Anthony Costello was running it. It was a charity fesh, and it was all I could hear was Anthony Costello, like Danny Doherty. She's getting no compensation here. That was like, it was Chris Domican saved me, and that was the fesh.
That's
with Shane and Kevin and Connor.
Yeah.
And the runny little butts.
Yeah, so they're 25 now, and the girlfriends are here. Yeah. So there's what I'd say to people is there's no easy way to get through the grief journey, and people telling you you're strong and all is rubbish. You just trudge through one day, one foot in front of another.
Not strong. It's just you put up, and having the dancing. I suppose it's that kind of like determination to keep going and cover up. And
what do you do?
You make it.
What are the choices?
What are the choices?
You know, do you collapse and your children then you're losing all your family, and your other two kids have had such had such a profound impact on them. So as a mother, you know, the days that I didn't want to get out of bed, it was, well, you get your ass out of bed because those kids have to go to college, get them back to college, make sure they have a future. You didn't want everything had fallen apart, but you didn't want it to completely disintegrate. So that was, if I didn't have the boys, would have been a very different story, I'd say. And I'm sure the same for Ken. And then also we were much more open to whatever opportunity presents itself. Ken had the opportunity, you know, a few years after that, 2 years afterwards, he was headhunted for Philips in the Netherlands. And it was like, oh, I couldn't do that. And I was, well, why not? Of course you can. Oh, well, what if it didn't work out? If it doesn't work out, you come home. It's like nothing bad. I'd be more of a risk taker now, because what can happen that's going to be so bad? We've lived through hell.
Nothing is going to be as bad as what you've lived through.
Yes.
And you come out more or less the other side.
Yes.
You're always going to remember Kenneth. You're
always.
The way he left the world is not something that you're probably going to forget very easily.
Oh, and if we could go back and change it, but you see, you can't. It's just, and that's the other thing. We think we control so much, but
and that's your engineering brain as well. You know, this highly organized structure to your life. You can see it in your house, how structured and organized it is. I'm thinking of mine. It's at home in a mess. I'm looking at your lovely home and how beautiful.
Thanks. But you know that, and yeah, that's just how the mind is. It's like routine. When the boys were little, you know, people said to me, how did you have help? How did you manage? And I said, oh, it was like industrial engineering. It was like a production line. You just structured it.
Did you feel that you were on after it happened? Did you feel that you crashed completely, and or did you feel that you went into hyper organized mode? Everything had to function to try and keep your mind on track, and therefore, you know,
I think the biggest change for me was I would have been very social, and out and about and stuck in things, and for me I became quite reclusive and more introverted, and just and even now, so COVID doesn't really matter to me aside from the age, but you know, getting just needing time, needing the walks on the beach, needing headspace, and not able to take on too much. Before, I'd be able to juggle so many things, Now,
you were very sociable, because I can remember you at my feshes as well.
yeah, I do too, Mary. I always remember your fish.
That's very funny. I don't know where that came out of. Do you know, it's just there, and I just thought, where did this come out of? Give it to Christine.
Oh,
That's for another story, though.
that's another story. That's another story.
It was just, but Christine, where to from now? What's your good? Do you think we'll get back to normality soon? Do you think there's been enough done for the Irish dancing to get back?
With the dancing, the dancing will survive. Maybe it'll be better out of this. Maybe the expectation of stages and trying to have feshes perfect and scheduled and all. Maybe everyone will be a bit more relaxed and just so grateful to dance. I just think if the culture of the dancing can stay alive, in any form, that's really, isn't that what we all should be? The goal for everybody is
hopefully people will be
to carry on. And of course the dancing will survive. Dancing is it's much bigger than just this one thing. It'll be different, I'm sure everything in life will be different. Maybe the way we run feshes will be different. Maybe online stuff will come on board more. But yeah, to me, of course, the dancing has to survive. It's so much a part of us and our culture. Maybe the cultural aspect will come back more. And everything will be more important to us. I'd like to think that.
I'd like to think that people will, put less pressure. I suppose there's a lot of pressure on, and as a fesh organizer, I know it, on everything having to be on time and everything. And not every parent puts that pressure, but some do, having to be finished at a certain time. Before, when I was dancing, it could be 5 o'clock. That's ridiculous, but it could be 5 o'clock in the morning when you're getting a result.
Yeah.
And you thought nothing about it. And then suddenly, as you say, the 40-foot stage starts to come in, and the special Marley flooring on it. And while they're all important, I think the culture and the collegiality of our friendships and providing a service and providing, we're not business people at the end of the day. We're teachers and judges that run a fesh and do the best you can to try and run it as professionally and as financially viable as possible.
I'd also like to think after this that we might be more cognizant of everybody's mental health with the dancing. And the dancing now is 12 months a year. It just isn't to be. And I think we all need a break, and the kids need a break. And there's so much stress on them physically, psychologically, they're sports psychologists brought in now. And the things I don't like actually with the way things have progressed, and there's a lot I love, is you have somebody who is 2 off a recall at a Worlds, who is an amazing dancer, and they're coming home feeling they're not a good dancer. It's grand at the grade level. Everyone thinks they're brilliant, but the better they get and the higher level they get to. And that's probably my biggest peeve with the competitive dancing, is so many amazing dancers.
Especially in the Mangrod. Children who have won out of Mangrod and they're in Ordgrod, but they are never, ever going to win an Ordgrod competition against maybe a 6 times world champion. Who happens to be, they're always going to be stuck in that group, whereas there should perhaps be a major championship for them.
Yes,
it can be the best in that grade.
Yeah, and not everyone is born to be a world champion. So I'm always concerned about the kids who start off and then they drop out, and especially girls, we want to keep them exercising. As they go into secondary school and college, it's fantastic for their mental health, for their physical well-being. The dancing is just, to me, beyond belief. It can be so good, but to keep them in it is so much more important. And I suppose Cayley dancing is great for that.
Yeah,
where schools can do that. The grade exams are good
It
for
should
that.
be brought into schools for exercise, for mental exercise as well
Yes.
as physical exercise.
Well,
The brain is a muscle.
another pet peeve of mine is the fact that there's music in secondary school for the leaving cert, and you can sing a song for your music exam, but you can't dance a dance, you know. And I think dancing should
absolutely be. Because I mean, as I say, our brains are muscles, just the same as the rest of our the muscles in our body, and it needs to be exercised, and it needs to be kept fit.
Yeah.
And, well, Christine, it's been fabulous. It's been sad, and it's been
happy
talking to you today.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity, Mary, and if there's just one person that it might have helped today, it was well worth it. I know in the beginning I was apprehensive, and I said to you, "Oh God, you know, Kenneth."
I wasn't expecting you to come back and say, "Mary, I've changed my mind.
Yeah,
I'd like to come on."
I did. I said
because I had no intentions of even going there with you. I said I made the decision that if Christine brings it up, fine. But I'm not going to ask the question because
I knew that.
did not know what or even how to approach you about it. And certainly
it's part of the story, Mary. It's a big part of the story now. And if
it helps some other family,
that's the thing. Just even, or it might help a family who know another family. And you know, no matter how awful things might seem today with COVID and been stuck at home, homeschooling kids and all, maybe if I could go back, I don't know. I don't know what I could do differently. I honestly don't know.
There's no, well, you could, but I suppose we could all do things differently if we had the benefit of hindsight. And if we could say, look, well, I didn't like the way I did that, I'll go back and do it a different way. But there's nothing about, you know.
I suppose the message I'd like to say to people in the midst of COVID is be gentle to yourself. Today, if kids are not getting through the homeschooling, if they're, whatever is falling apart, if the dinner gets burnt, whatever, if you could let go. I would have been very organized and orderly. And now when things fall apart, I have such a different attitude with, oh, so what? Everything, if it's not death, even if there's an illness, there's hope. If it's not death, it can be sorted. That'd be the message I'd have. And this too will pass. In grief with passing time, it improves. COVID will pass. So that's a lot of my mantra. This too will pass. And
how much did dancing help you in that, knowing that you could go back, that you had something that was there all the time that you could go to? That did you feel that being able to go back into classes or going back teaching or?
It was huge. The day I went out to Corofin, that I think that was the first day I drove the car, actually, and it was months. I don't actually know the time frame, but it was a couple of months later. Certainly, I would think, I don't know. I actually have no idea of time. I know Angela phoned me and said, you know, come out to the class. I will go in. I couldn't drive at the time. I just things that you could normally do. She said, I'll come in and I'll pick you up and come out to the class. And I thought, oh God, no, I can't go next Monday, leave it. So finally, when I said, you know what, I'll go this evening. I will go out to the class. And I had to pull over on the road several times on the way out because I was crying. I was like, what am I doing? This doesn't matter. A dancing class doesn't matter. Dancing, nothing mattered in life. So it's like, what am I doing? And I put on my glasses. You know, I don't wear the glasses that often, but I put on the glasses going into the class because I thought my eyes now are going to be all red and I feel stupid and I look stupid and no one will know what I'll say. And funny enough, Derek's son Tiernan saw me walking and he just shouted, oh, hey, Chris, you're back. I didn't know you wore glasses. And it was
just as if nothing
happened. And then you get inside your head. The other thing that happened was Sean Kilkenny actually had me, he contacted me at Christmas and he said,
sweetheart.
Absolutely. And Sean said, you're coming over to judge my feis in March. And I was, no, couldn't possibly do it, Sean. Couldn't possibly do that. I wouldn't remember a number. I just, you know, I'm barely able to get out of bed. And that was from the August to the March. And he said, don't worry, I have your back. I'll have a plan B. And I remember saying to him, what was your plan B? He said, there never was a plan B. But I had to get on a plane on my own. And I didn't have the security of this bubble around me. And I remember that was the first day that I got through a day where I did not think of Kenneth. And I went into the loo at one stage and I thought, I've been sitting there for about 4 hours and I've not thought of Kenneth, because you got so sucked into the competition and watching the dancing. And that gave me great hope. You know, I felt guilty as well, but you know, that if you can find whatever it is that brings joy to you, that
even temporarily,
dancing is great for that. It's sure, we're all crazy, Mary. We go to a fest and we're all so absorbed in it. There's no other world. And there's a beauty in that, you know.
Well, Carmel, as I said, it's been Christine. Who's Carmel?
I don't know.
Just my friend Carmel's head, just her face came in front of me there. Christine, it's been an absolute, well, you know, I could say it's been a joy, but it's been a roller coaster of an interview. It's gone from happy to extremely sad, and then to positive and hope. Hope.
And I like that message. Yeah. There's always hope, Mary.
There's always hope.
Yeah.
That's all we have. They say, the Holocaust survivors have often said you can live without food and you can live without love, but you can't live without hope.
Yeah.
It's that keeps you driving forward.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. You were fab.
Thanks.
Dindera Leshan Clor, that's the end of the show for today. Until the next time, Lacuna of Day. Walam Tugalir, Chiacona, Sonus, August Grow, August Gadeshif Sloan. Gadeshif Sloan, Chris.
Bye, Mary. Thanks.